All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Good Vibes. I'm Martin False, and joining us now, as always, Miss Debbie Cox DeNova, our transformation coach here. First of all, we got a good topic today, but happy Valentine's
Happy
Day.
Valentine's Day.
And the topic is perfect.
Yes.
All right, we're going to talk about happily ever after in love.
Happily ever after in
I
love.
feel like a swan. All right.
Yeah, a topic I know that everybody is interested in on some level. We've talked about this to some degree. It's kind of a continuation of the last conversation that we had about making love last,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So we talked about the stages of, just as a recap really quickly, we talked about the stages of love where there's lust, right? Where you get that neurochemical dump. It makes you bond really quickly. That can't last forever, right? And then
right.
you get into the attraction stage where you are basically most of the time falling in love during that stage. You just want that one person. And then there's the attachment phase where everything kind of calms down. You're really relying more on oxytocin and actually doing activities that are going to increase dopamine in your relationships and keep the love going for a long period of time. Couples who don't last, they start to break down around this time, and there's a lot of research that points to what we can do to maintain the relationship long term, and very importantly, what we can learn from couples who are not getting it right. So there's a lot of research on that, and we'll love to discuss
We were
that.
talking in the office this morning, me and Joni and Doyle, and if you don't like the person you're with
Yes.
and you don't have things in common, you're going to have trouble in stage 3 and 4.
Absolutely. And this is where you have to watch because, as we talked about before, that huge neurochemical dump will have your prefrontal cortex shut off, the reasoning part of your brain. It'll have you feeling all of these magnetic attraction feelings, and you'll sort of dismiss everything else and kind of think, well, we'll work it out no matter what the challenges are, right?
Right.
When that subsides, what you're left with, and what research really points to, is that if you don't have enough in common, if you don't share enough values, it's going to be very difficult. So one of the things that John Gottman of the Gottman Institute says is that while you hear a lot, relationships are hard, you have to put in a lot of work. While that is true to a degree, while you have to invest energy in order to grow your relationship, if you choose the right partner from the very beginning, you shouldn't have to feel like it doesn't feel like work. Right? It feels like work when you've chosen a partner who's out of sync with you, and now you're trying to bridge those inconsistencies in the way that you operate from day to day. If you choose someone who shares values and you have more in common, then you will actually have less to worry about. We can talk about the things that then you have to invest in order to create a great relationship.
Should you make a list? Because we were also talking this morning. Some couples, one smokes, one doesn't smoke.
Yeah.
One likes to go to the bars and drink a lot. The other one likes to stay home and watch TV.
Yes.
One of them likes to go to concerts. The other one would rather listen to records in the house.
Yes.
Should you make a list?
I think making a list is really, really helpful, especially if you're not in a relationship yet. One of the things that people do is they wait until their marriage is breaking down. They're already in a marriage, their marriage is breaking down in order to seek help. But if you actually put some thought into it, especially before you actually get into a relationship, what are your deal breakers, right? We can't, two human beings coming together for any reason, there are going to be conflicts. That's inevitable no matter how much commonalities you share, right? How many commonalities you share. However, if you have deal breakers based on, and we all have past relationships that we can point to and that we can learn from and go, you know what, it really just didn't work for me.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah,
It didn't work
yeah.
for me that this person liked to go out all the time and drink. That doesn't work. That becomes a deal breaker for you. Then
And it doesn't mean that that person was bad.
Not
they
at
just
all.
weren't meant for you.
exactly. So knowing what your deal breakers are, what you would like, obviously, what you would like to attract into your life. Attraction is very, very interesting because a lot of times what research has pointed to is that you think you know what you want, and then you're presented with exactly what you want, and you're like, oh, I just not like that, right? And then you'll be attracted to somebody that you think that isn't actually on your list,
So let me ask you, should you make I was thinking of a song, It's Too Late to Turn Back Now, I believe I'm falling in love. Should you make the list before you start falling in love? Once you're falling in love, that list gets skewed.
Absolutely. It becomes much more difficult. So making the list ahead of time is always more valuable, especially if there are huge deal breakers that you have experienced in the past that have caused you a lot of angst in relationships. So maybe you are super religious and you like to, or you're spiritual and you like to go to church and you like to have, and you would like to have a partner there with you.
Right.
Well, if you already know that in the past it didn't work for your partner to not share religious or spiritual beliefs, and they don't go to church and they don't do the things that you like to do, then that should be on your deal breaker list so that you can save yourself some time, and especially so that you don't get swept up in that neurochemical dump that happens with lust, and then override what's important to you. You can do that early on so that you don't
There's
waste
so
time.
many things you can do. If you drink a couple of Michelob Ultras, and then your partner drinks a fifth of Jack, we're going to have a problem.
Absolutely. Yes, they're going to have a huge problem. So what Gottman says is that they've identified 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, okay? 4 things that deteriorate relationships and that bad relationships have. And the first one is criticism. So this is you making a bad judgment call on the person themselves based on bad things that have happened in the relationship. All right. The second one is defensiveness. So that feeling of attacking back, or always in that whiny kind of voice, like, what, I didn't do that, or that kind of
Right,
thing, that defensiveness. Right. There's contempt, which we've talked about before, sulfuric acid to the relationship. Contempt is really that looking down your nose at the other person, like dismissive, right? And really strong relationships just do not have contempt.
Almost defiant.
Yeah, defiant, but also just looking down on them, like, just done with them. The relationships that are the best don't have it, or they get over it really quickly. And then the fourth one is stonewalling. It's like going into that place where you're no longer communicating to your partner. Whatever, right?
Yeah.
Not gonna give you any feedback whatsoever.
I got a bunch of friends. Some of them, everybody talks about their relationships with their friends. Some of them go, God, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. But I have another sector of friends that say, it's not that difficult.
Right.
I'm going, which one is it?
It depends.
Depends on who you have.
It depends on who you have and how you're communicating within the relationship. So before the break, we talked about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? And we talked about criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. So if these things are present in your relationship because of learned behavior, maybe from when you were a child, then even if you're with somebody who has a lot in common with you, you're going to have a difficult time in the relationship, okay? So let's talk about some strategies on how to overcome these things based on the research from couples who are not getting it right. So criticism is the first one. If you grew up in a house where you were criticized a lot, in all likelihood, what happens is you leave the house as an adult and you start criticizing yourself. So typically, when people are criticizing other people, they're very self-critical. So one way to get over your own tendency for criticism is to start to actually have to notice what you're doing right on the inside, and then that will project out onto your partner. What they have found is that in relationships where couples are unhappy, it's not that the partner is not being nice to the other partner. What they found is that the unhappy partner will often miss 50% of the bids for connection and signs of positivity that are being communicated. So start to look and turn toward what is actually working in yourself and in your partner.
So get your antenna fixed.
Get your antenna fixed, absolutely.
Okay.
The other thing is defensiveness. And the thing about it is that taking responsibility in relationships is really, really important. So the way that we communicate is huge. So coming to someone with a request, taking responsibility, I feel this way. I feel really annoyed that the kitchen is such a mess. And then shining a light on how your partner can be the hero or be the shining star in the situation. It would be really, really helpful if you could help me with the dishes. Do you mind, right? That's a bid for connection. And by the way, when someone makes a bid for connection in relationship, what they have found is that the partners who turn toward are the partners who create happy relationships. They found that in the happy relationships, partners turn toward when they're for a bid for connection, right, 86% of the time, versus unhappy partners who do it only 33% of the time. And a bid for connection could be, it could be as simple as, hey, I had a weird dream last night. Right? Someone who's turning toward would be like, tell me about it. Even if they're in the middle of something, it's just this momentary.
Was I in it?
Right. Versus like just, oh, you know what I mean? And going back to reading the paper. Or it could be actually making a request. Can you help me with the dishes? A partner who turns toward, even if it's inconvenient, is a partner who is sort of investing into the fiber, like the fabric of the relationship, versus someone who's like,
So when Gladys tells Bob, I had a dream, Bob needs to put the paper down and say, well, Gladys, tell me all about it.
Yes. Or when the husband is coming home from work and says something really interesting happened at work, and she knows she's probably going to glaze over a little bit, but says, okay, tell me about it, right? If he's excited about it. This is a give and take. It's reciprocal. The other thing is that with stonewalling, one way that they have found is that when you're turning toward a lot in the relationship, you're building sort of that integrity of the relationship. It makes it easier when you are feeling sort of all of those built-up feelings that could otherwise result in stonewalling. Well, you're actually more likely to be to approach discussions that are a little tense with humor, which kind of diffuses the tension, right? Or just friendliness. Just a culture of kindness is created. There are 3 skills that psychologist Joanne DeVille, who's also a researcher, has identified for romantic competence, meaning that you are exhibiting a great ability to handle all things throughout relationships. The first one is insight, all right? It's this awareness within yourself and the other person about what's going on. So knowing, for example, and evaluating for yourself, well, this person is late for the date, but this person's always late. So it's not about me and not taking it personally, having those insights, right? Knowing that maybe you should make a phone call instead of texting because that might result. Just kind of learning from the past and having insights. The second one is mutuality, thinking about the other person and sometimes making compromises even though you would prefer it to go a certain way. Just realizing that a relationship is give and take. And so, for example, if you are taking a job that's going to compromise some of the time that you spend with your partner and that's important, saying, hey, do you mind if I take this job if I protect some time for the two of us to spend together? So that's that mutuality, thinking about yourself and also thinking about the other person. And then the third one is emotion regulation. And this means that whenever you have a propensity to react to something, sort of taking a breath, evaluating, and coming to the conversations in a spirit of kindness so that you're not coming with resentment or contempt, and giving them...
Take the deep breath, don't lash out.
Yeah, and giving them generosity.
Because those words you use to lash out may haunt you.
Absolutely, and long-term harm the relationship for sure.
Brad Paisley wrote a song, Waiting on a Woman.
Yeah.
Andy Griffith was actually in the video with him. People need to watch that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, okay, I will watch that.
Don't get all antsy when the woman's a little late. She's fixing herself up for you.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's the generosity of spirit, right? Like really investigating, like, what's going on here, because I don't want to make the wrong assumption, and having a communication, deep diving, knowing that love is a practice, really, right? And we want to spiral up instead of spiraling down. So if we can, also knowing that romantic competence, if we can teach this to our children young, research has shown it creates healthy relationships for them and a better sense of well-being and health.
So the next time your partner tells you, hey, can you help me do the dishes? Don't go, really? Go, yeah, let's do it. Put a little music on, get in the kitchen,
Yes.
have a little fun.
It goes a long way. It
Right.
does, yeah.
And eat the rest of the French fries.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll see y'all next week. Don't go away.